listen, thank you for coming on. I mean, I just want to have like an open conversation with you about this because I know so many people, their biggest hang up when they talk about healing, optimal health is how to eat. And I think a lot of it doesn't come down just to what to eat, but it's the cooking portion of it. It's the portion that really kind of hits you a little bit where, wow, this seems difficult to me. And therefore I won't do it, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And I'd love to get into some of that. And first off, let me, go ahead and kind of give you an introduction here because Aran Goldstein, you're a chef, teacher, entrepreneur, dedicated towards building your skill and intuition around food. You've come from where, in my backyard, where I went to school, Northeastern. I went to Boston University.
Yeah, I noticed.
You went to Culinary Institute up there in New England. But you had stints at Michelin-starred, restaurants in Italy. You opened a restaurant in China. You've taught so many different people along the way in organic farming and even medical students learning how to use food as medicine, which is what I kind of want to get into here. But let me start with this. How'd you get into cooking? Did you always have a love for it?
Always, it's just I'm one of those people that kind of has a story from childhood that knew they were into something. It just took me a while to circle around and end up going to culinary school and diving into real kitchens. It took me till after college, but it's always been there. I was always with my parents, in the kitchen. And it's kind of a cliche story, but I was the kid that was interested in cracking the eggs, on the weekends with my parents and scrambling eggs and making pancakes. Which is interesting because I come from a family of 7. I've got 4 siblings. And for whatever reason, I'm the only one that was really interested in being in the kitchen. So I get that people are coming from, different likes and different interests. And for some people, it comes naturally. And for others, I get what you're saying. It feels impossible, right? And it feels so foreign. And that's why I do what I do, because I want to make it easier for people.
So let's talk about that, because I know a ton of patients that want to make it easy for themselves to cook, be healthier, and realize that a lot of their problems are due to the way they ate. And so how do you start with people? What do you recommend they do to at least start to cook a little bit more and start to build that relationship with your kitchen?
I think it starts before even diving into the cooking process. I think it's first asking the question. It's like, what do you want from this part of your life, right? And this is what I do in this cooking course that I just launched. Before we even dive into the basics and how to hold a knife, right? It's asking ourselves, what kind of life do I want, right? And where does food fit in to that life, right? We stress so often, go to school, right? Get good grades so you can buy a house, so you can have a nice car, so you can get a good education, right? But how often are we going through the exercise of setting up our lives so that we can eat whatever food we want, right? The most nourishing food on the planet, right? And so I think that's a powerful question to ask ourselves, right? Like, do we want to really be healthy? Do we want our kids to really be healthy? What is it going to take to make that happen, right? And then once that's clear, it's okay. So maybe it's hard at first to get cooking, but you've established your own personal mission, or maybe that's done as a family, right? Because I think so many people are just kind of letting life happen when it comes to the kitchen part of home, right? And the daily and the weekly rituals, okay? So I think that's step 1. And then step 2 is going and seeking, an education of sorts. And it's ubiquitous out there. You can yes, go on YouTube and go on lessons and get all the information, right? Or you can engage with someone like me that's really walking you through that process. And what I'm trying to help people with is to start to kind of think like a cook, right? And so the first part of the course is, before we even dive in, it's kind of resetting, building a framework, and starting to think like a cook, right? Imagine walking into a restaurant and the cooks and the kitchen hadn't prepped anything, right? Hadn't thought ahead, hadn't planned out the week or the month for that matter, right? And there are little things that can make all the difference with how we even take home our groceries, right? Instead of just taking the bag of parsley with its rubber band around the stems and just throwing it in there and then forgetting about it after a few days, right?
Right.
So that's what we work on. That's what I work on at the very beginning, is kind of the shifts, the little shifts that you can make to set yourself up for success during the week.
One of the things I saw you posting about is knowing where your food comes from. And I feel like that is truly lacking. We see things in boxes already super processed. Yeah. We see things, just prepared in a little bit of plastic already, and we don't even know how it got there. We don't even know what the animal even looks like sometimes. I mean, you talk to some people, they don't know what veal actually is, right? And they don't know. And they're quite limited also. They maybe only eat some chicken and then very few things and complain about their diet.
Yeah.
How do we get back to that idea of actually do we need better relationships with butchers? Do we need to do our kind of research a little bit more and get away from the pre-packaged foods and processed foods? What's your advice there?
We could talk for the next 10 hours about all the layers of the onion that this conversation brings up.
Right.
And I think you and I both share the belief that we are as disconnected as we've ever been as a species from our source of nourishment, right?
Totally.
And so I do think that the act of cooking is an opportunity to connect ourselves with not just that source, right? But ourselves, right? And of course, the planet and each other, right? Because when you walk into a Walmart or a Target and, you're getting your groceries there, or for so many people that literally only have a gas station to get their fresh food from, that's a very disconnected existence, right? Mm-hmm. And so, yes, I think we have an opportunity to kind of not just reframe, but reclaim what once was so inherent to all of us, right? That we didn't have to think about these things. And I think right now is a symptom of all this kind of confusion and overthinking because of that disconnect, right? So many of us are not growing up in families anymore where mom or dad or grandma or grandpa were either growing the animal or, growing the produce or tending to the bees or foraging or hunting and all that, right? So right now, I think is just a very awkward time for so many of us to be sifting through the noise of, well, what am I even supposed to be eating? What's morally sound to be eating, right? Which that is a whole other conversation, because we don't grow up just knowing, right? Now, to me, although that sounds kind of daunting, right, to kind of tackle, it's so exciting because on the other end of that is the most incredible food that we can be eating, the most connected experiences with our own kids or our neighbors. I described it, my own personal life, like we're here in Portugal, all of my friends that I have here now in this new place are because of the food that I've seeked out, because wherever we are in the world, wherever we've lived, my wife and I, it's like you hit the ground and the first thing is, where am I getting my food, right? And where I'm getting my food leads to my people, and my community and my kind of village and tribe, right? And now I know that's deeply seated in my own personal passion, but what would our world like if we all treated our food that way, right? How connected will our neighborhoods be, our communities, right? And how different could they look? What would health look like if that was our approach? So I don't even know where we started. I guess, the conversation of connecting. And now that brings up a lot of kind of harder work to do now, right? Because I think there's power in looking the animal in its eyes, right? And at least taking a whole chicken home, taking a whole fish home, right? Visiting farms where those animals are still alive, knowing that you're going to be sourcing. I just had a really powerful meeting with a guy last week where he just became, by kind of not by choice, he keeps goats and lamb, right? Because his land burned down a couple years ago, and he's like, "Oh, I heard if I get goats, they'll eat the brush, right?" Mm-hmm. And I heard that lamb was going to be available. I met him in the parking lot, and I got a few legs, and I took that animal home. And let me tell you, the energy that holds, where I met the only other person in the world, the only person that took care of that animal, he's handing it to me, I have a newfound sense of responsibility. I have a newfound sense of connection. I have his phone number, and he's going to let me know when more is available. And to me, this is living really human, you know. At least this is me supporting a world that I believe in, that I see as really beautiful. So I don't know. I feel like that was kind of a distracted roundabout answer to the connection piece, but there's just so much of this, and I want it to come across as opportunity. And no,
you did it. You did an amazing job there, because it reminds me. Listen, I grew up with European parents from Poland, and what they knew as life was, my grandmother, the babcia, would go out every single day and go out to different places, go to the butcher, go get the bread, go and cook and prepare. And they'd help out because they had to, because babcia wouldn't have them sitting around while she cooked, right? And it would be fresh stuff every day. My father was even telling me, where he grew up, it was kind of the ghetto of Warsaw. They didn't have refrigerators. You literally had to buy the food and use it right there. There was no storage. There were no leftovers or anything. You would use everything. And you'd cook it all, and it would all be super fresh. And this would happen every single day. I think we've gotten a little bit spoiled, some in a good way. I mean, there's but that idea, and then even growing up and having my parents do that with me. And like you said, I remember bringing home a whole fish and having it flop around in the sink with water until it was time to cook. And that would be an educational lesson of, how to scale a fish. We don't realize that there is work to be done, that we don't just buy fish filleted and everything like that without lots of work in the background. So I feel that so many got away, and that leads me to another question I have, because I'm around now many parents, and I see my niece and nephew, and I see that my brother and sister-in-law are very busy and don't have time to cook as much. And usually it is the pizzas and everything else that the kids get to eat that I don't think are very nutritious. But I see you, and you have children, and you're posting that, yesterday you were snapping the asparagus, which was an amazing tip that I never knew, where to snap them and what to cook, what to throw away. Amazing. And nature shows you, right? Bend, throw away, eat. But what do you say to those parents that say, listen, I'm working a very hard 9-to-5 job. I get home, I'm tired. Sometimes I have bills and I have to clean and I have to do all this stuff. I just don't have time to cook and my kids, aren't interested in vegetables. What do you say to them?
Well, it does go back to the value shift, right? Mm-hmm. We all got our planners out, and we're doing our to-do lists, and we're planning out the week. Are we putting food there? Or are we just getting home or texting our spouses or significant others and saying, hey, have you thought about dinner? What are we doing for dinner tonight? Or are you getting ahead of it and just planning? And the reality is, I see so much overthinking of what it can mean to just put a simple, delicious meal on the table. And you bring up your babcia. My wife is from Poland, and I observe babcia when I'm actually going to see her in a couple months. And the simplicity of meals in her house, right, in her approach, right, is incredible. Mm-hmm. And there are times where I'll go over her house, because someone else's food always tastes the best, right? Sometimes I'm just in awe of how she can coax out such just delicious food, right? Very aromatic, right? And so satisfying. And the reality is that it's simple, it's real ingredients. She's making it with all the love in the world, right? And I'm not saying you have to take home your whole fish or start with a whole chicken, right? But with the right intention, right, of just committing, night in and night out to just getting real food in the house, just make a soup, put a piece of fish in, put something in the oven with a little bit of olive oil and salt, and call it a day, saute some asparagus, make some black rice. It's once you just get into a rhythm, and a lot of what I'm working on with people is kind of creating flow, right? In this part of our lives. I happen to believe that if we can create flow with food and with our kitchen rituals, it bleeds into the other places we want so much to have flow, right? We're all working on, getting flow in the workplace and in our work. It's like, how can I really accomplish a lot today, right? Let's get this right first, right? If we are not getting this right first, we are not living a healthy and optimal life, right?
Yeah.
And we know that. Right. So let's just take a deep breath and let's zoom out a second and ask ourselves, what the hell are we doing? Like, we're first human beings alive in this incredible planet full of abundance, right? Are we going to take advantage of that? Are we going to celebrate it? Are we going to have so much fun with that? Like, we can do anything. We can do anything. Let's just spend more time in celebrating where food, fits into all of this. And I know, I know some people are just like, I hear you, but I just don't even like cooking. At the very least, if you can commit to, okay, at the very least, source differently, right? And I think just doing a little bit of the cooking process kind of flips light bulbs and say, you know what, I'm at least going to be more careful about some of the choices that I'm making that involve outsource. Because there are amazing companies doing amazing things that are really trying to do right by all of us by creating healthy products, right? And I'm not saying you have to go home and make everything from scratch, right? But I think if you can start to ask questions, where's my food coming from? What's in this? Like, read some ingredients, right? Not that I think we should be eating very many foods with ingredients at all, right? Other than the one that whole food is. It's a journey, and we're all starting from different places. There's no shame I grew up and I was thrilled if my dad brought home, bacon, egg, and cheese biscuits from McDonald's breakfast. That was like one of my favorites, right?
Yep.
We're all coming at it from different places, and let's get more curious. Let's talk to each other much more. Let's be really open. I know how hard this conversation is with families that are approaching things differently, especially where it comes from a parenting standpoint. And going to parties and being exposed to different stuff and what's my kid allowed to eat versus others. But, if we can come at this without judgment and just kind of open hearts and talk openly, because I think this is the most important conversation that we can be having, right? Mm-hmm. Where's our food coming from? How are we producing it? How are we going to make sure that we're all getting, what sets us up to thrive as human beings? So we have energy and we're excited to be alive and work on, complicated things and coming up with creative, fun solutions. I think food is the center of that. And I think it's undervalued, although I think you and I would agree that it's shifting. And people are intuiting that there's a better way, right? That there's a different way, right? People are so tired of feeling sick and not having energy and having symptoms, like constant symptoms of something, right? So I see it as an exciting path ahead.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And I see that there is this shift of people asking questions, being more curious, right? And it's happening slowly. But then there's the other side of that sometimes that curiosity leads to overwhelm of information. Mm-hmm. And you probably see this even on Instagram, social media. You have different people advocating for different things. You have carnivore MD saying kale is bad for you, right? You have the vegans saying meat is bad. You got Bill Gates saying everything that walks and has legs is terrible. You got to eat all plant-based meat, everything.
Yep.
And then it's like, oh, do I go keto? Do I go this? Is it pescatarian? And sooner or later, you just become overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Are you a fan of diets in general? Or are you just a fan of just eating what is more intuitive and quality?
It's the intuitive piece. And what you're describing is a symptom of our times.
Right.
It's not just food that we're overwhelmed with, right? Now, this comes back to slowing down, taking a deep breath. And when we talk about that idea of connection, it's not just connecting with where our food's coming from, it's connecting with ourselves. And if we can create space when we're eating and when we're cooking, and really, really without letting all the noise inform everything, sit down and eat a meal. Like, how does that food make you feel? Like, really, close your eyes and whatever it is that you're eating, how do you feel? Right? Does it light you up? Do you have good energy? Were you bloated? Were you gassy? Like all that stuff, right? Now, coming back to the very beginning, what are your values? What's important to you? Are you going to commit to cooking? Are you going to commit to like this discovery process? Are you going to push aside the noise and just try to discover it yourself? I hear 100% how hard it is, because I've gone through this myself as I was evolving through and sifting through all the information, starting to read Men's Health in high school, right? And being told to, limit saturated fats, to everything in between, right? I would encourage people to just take everything with a grain of salt, right? As my perspective has shifted over the years and kind of circled around, and now I come to a place where whatever you're eating, right? Try very hard to just trust and tune into your body, right? And be open to possible evolution, okay? If you're a vegan, if you're a full-on carnivore, I think that goes for all of us, right? Stay open, okay? When you bring up Carnivore MD, I love the guy, and I've shifted that way, and I go that way. But another thing, and I watched an awesome talk that you did, and a place where you and I definitely see eye to eye is this idea of belief, right? And our beliefs and the placebo effect, right? Especially when it pertains to food. It's so powerful, right? In a both positive and potentially harmful way, to where we're overanalyzing potentially and overthinking, and the food decisions become so full of anxiety that we are not even digesting food, even if it's even if it's all the right stuff, right? And that's why I really believe that if, let's just say you're a vegan and you believe so with all your heart that this is just the best thing for you and your body, I think that vegan can lead a healthy and happy life and be connected and aligned and well and live to 100. And I think the same of that carnivore. And I actually believe that it might mean 80%, 90% more than the actual physical matter. But everywhere in between, there is that physical matter stuff, as long as we're approaching it from a real food perspective. Like, I don't think you can believe your way out of a toxic diet full of fast food and Doritos and Coke, right? Like, and the same goes for our health in general, right? But our mindset in between, I think, means so much and is also undervalued, okay? So that's where I think if we can just stay curious, really try to come at it, with that open mindset, that I think is the first step.
Yeah. And you're right. When you overthink, you start to lose, that intuition. You start to self-doubt even everything. And you start to seek answers outside. And you start to seek these people and say, all right, he seems like he knows what he's doing. I'm going to do what he does. But meanwhile, you're a very different person than that person. Mm-hmm. And you need to then look inward, I believe, and see what's right for you. And start to be, your own best detective. And like you said, how does this make me feel afterwards? And truly sit with it. And then understand also, a lot of it isn't just what you're eating, it's how you're doing it. Are you eating it on the run? Are you eating it in a stressful situation while listening to the news tell you about how terrible it is out in the world? And suddenly you're in a sympathetic state, no diastasis, your whole digestive system seizes up and you can't digest anything, even if it's the most easily digestible food. So that's a big part of it too, is how and why you're eating.
Yeah, which brings up dinner time, for example, in the average household, right? And this is where the last thing I want to do is be adding stress to people listening, right? Whatever you're making, keep it simple. And if you can keep mealtime, free of stress, especially if you've got young kids, right? Mm-hmm. They're feeling that. If you're overthinking and if you're stressed out in the kitchen, they are feeling that stress, and you better believe they're affected by it, right? So don't overdo it. But they're also feeling, by the way, if you're going through the takeout and just grabbing the McDonald's or Wendy's or whatever it may be, But I'll tell you, if you're happy and feeling great and you're laughing, it might even be a better decision that night than if you're stressed out and trying to make something really healthy, So,
well, let me add to that really quick, because From a medical perspective, dealing with a lot of doctors and speaking to them about why are so many kids having allergies and food sensitivities, a lot of that is triggered by trauma or stress during the ingestion of a certain food. So your body sees that with the stress and corresponds it. So mom and dad are having a big fight over dinner.
Yeah.
You're eating a certain grain, certain something, anything. And you start to have a reaction because you're actually in a very stressed situation. To you as a child, this is trauma going on. And your body is saying, hey, I'm ingesting this and we're having trauma. Therefore, this is now our reaction to this food. Suddenly you build a sensitivity or an actual allergic reaction to food. So to any parent like listening out there, it's incredible. Like what you said is so smart. I'd rather you eat, something not even that good for you, but eat it in the right environment, in a loving, nurturing, peaceful environment that the child could digest in, because children pick up on energy. We've learned to subdue that almost so much, where the energy is like, whatever, it's a big fight, it's this, and our body compensates. Children don't. They like being in that peaceful situation, and that's what helps them so much. So that is so critical. And I have seen that so much, and so many parents are, how could this happen? I never had allergies. I never had all of this. Well, think about the environment when you eat. That whole idea of sitting around dinner table, turning off tablets and iPhones away, right? And just have a normal conversation, laugh a little bit, tell some jokes, and slowly go through your food and just be together. That's what it used to be. Now it's just like, quick, go, eat while, watching. Don't even look at your food and just, it's the opposite of what we should be doing, but it's unfortunate.
Yeah. And I'll add from the child's standpoint, my approach and our approach, my wife and I, is not to say, hey, try this, or like, hey, well, sure, I'll do that, but not to do so in any forceful manner. When you're thinking about those triggers, right? Imagine being a kid and always hearing, you got to eat that, or like, having consequences if they don't, and all that. So my personal approach, I love to serve things family style. So I'll have a few different things. They're on the table, and I'm just there enjoying it. My wife's there enjoying it. We're spooning out different things. I'm giving my son autonomy to just choose and try. We do try to kind of have a general rule of we at least have to try it once, but that's very gentle so it feels flowy. And so we're honoring his own intuition, right? I don't know what's going on in his body. I don't know if he's like just rejecting something, or like we all have that, and my wife and I have completely different desires, right? Every, one night versus the other, right? Or one time a month versus the other. So this also opens up a line of communication. What are you feeling like tonight? Would you like this, or this tonight? And having a collaborative approach to mealtime. So it's not just dad's cooking every meal and I'm just left with whatever, right? So again, I think food can be, and the food decisions we're making can be, from a family standpoint, this really exciting thing to have really sound communication, right? To grow as parents, to get to know our kids and give them, a place to thrive and flourish, right? It can be a classroom. It can be, it's also, I see it with my son as this opportunity to see the world and discover the world. Understand that this is an incredibly diverse place, and there's different cuisines and different people, and we're different colors, and we speak different languages. I get giddy when I think about all the things we can be doing each night, right? I know that can seem overwhelming, but wherever we're starting, just get in there, just commit to just getting the real stuff in there, push away the junk that we know is not serving us, right? And then just go have fun.
That's it. Mealtime could be this sacred, connective and educational time. And yet we turn it into this burdensome, just do it to do it, quick, whatever's easiest. The opposite of what I would say was healthy. And let me ask you a question, because I actually brought this up in our morning meeting. Some patients had questions about, they heard olive oil was bad to cook with. And of course, seed oils we know are bad to cook with, vegetable oils, and they don't want to use lard, or is ghee too heavy to cook with? What are you cooking with?
So I agree with the olive oil standpoint. I try to keep it raw, or at the very least, I'm really gentle with the heat. This is a tough one because people got their jar of olive oil and it's right there, and it's so ubiquitous, and it's very easy to get caught up in just like saute an olive oil, right? I love making clarified butter, which is something I teach in the course. And it's like, it's one of those things you teach someone once and you're like, that's it. That's all I do. Right. It's that easy. And a fraction of the cost of going to get a grass-fed clarified butter in the store could be $20 for a jar. You don't need to be doing that. You can make it. I do like virgin coconut oil for some higher heat stuff. Right. And whole butter for things that are gentle. Very often when you're finishing dishes, whole butter is beautiful. And if you have access to really awesome pasture-raised animals, right? 100% grass-fed, the fat from those animals is incredible, right? And we're just so used to throwing away the fat and trimming things and in the garbage when you can so simply be rendering, right? And saving that fat. And my God, like the dishes and the flavor that you can coax out of dishes from cooking with animal fats is transformative. Like one of my favorite things to do is confit, right? Like teach someone how to confit duck legs, right? Or use extra chicken fat or rendered beef fat to cook potatoes in. And I mean, it just changes everything, right? But it also changes our physiology, right? We've been sold, gosh, for so long that fat is this demon, right? One transformative book that I read, Nina Teicholz's book, I never know how to pronounce her name, The Big Fat Surprise, just changed so much of my perspective. And I was on that track anyways. And I would recommend that as an incredible read for people. And then once you also start to realize like historical reference of these fats, like animal fats, that was cooking oil, right? That was cooking fat, and so, stick to those things. I'm trying to think if I missed anything. I don't know, honestly. Avocado oil is a really interesting one. It's so damn expensive, but I don't really know. Some people think it's really great. Yeah. I stick with the butter, the coconut oil, the olive oil gently, and the animal fats.
Yeah. I mean, it's great advice. And of course, for those that want to go down rabbit holes, there are books, there's other things, and you could look into this more. And there's your course, which I want to hear about. I'm getting hungry right now just talking about this food. And I love cooking. I'm no, chef or culinary artist or anything, but I'd love to get more into it. Like you say, confit, making your own clarified butter. These are all wonderful skills. Tell us more about the course.
So the course, which is ongoing right now, people are going through it and it's about to wrap up. And I did this first one live, right? And it's been incredible to get feedback from this really diverse group of people. And it'll be available again really soon, making changes, adding some things to it. And it's going to be kind of an evergreen thing that people can take and take at their own pace. But I will do live versions probably once or twice a year moving forward. But I'm actually calling it the Family Food Reset, this next launch, because this is really geared towards families. By no means do you have to have kids or be a couple. You could take this and really enjoy it and get a lot from it. But it's an opportunity to reset, to go through that exercise at the beginning and get clear on your own vision moving forward, and then to dive into the materials. So it's kind of based on 5 weeks. First one being kind of the exercise of clearing your pantries. I kind of share my personal approach to, how I source and my kind of do's and don'ts, right? And that's only what works for me. And I set that up so it's just a template. Follow it if you want. My go-tos in terms of like no refined sugar enters the home. I kind of go through my personal approach to like what sweeten means, like, from honey or maple syrup or coconut sugar. And so we kind of establish the vision for the pantry and for sourcing, and then we dive into mise en place, how to hold a knife skills in week 1. And that's also how to work with your kids on those things. So my son is next to me. He's kind of in and out of these videos because sometimes he's like running off to pee or something like that. And then he's coming back. But that's all real, right? That's also the reality. And then we move through the weeks and we kind of build on the foundation, right? So week 2, we get into making your own salad dressings and vinaigrettes, making your own clarified butter, making your own mayonnaise. And part of that is creating a shift and creating the light bulbs of saying, wait, I don't need to be outsourcing these really simple things. I can make my own. They can be more delicious. They can be malleable. So I can make any version of these things. more affordable, and I can control the quality ingredients. You can spend more on better olive oil because you didn't buy a $6, thing of salad dressing. And then we get into meat cookery and different ways to approach just ground meat at the beginning, to egg cookery and how to make a perfect frittata, how to scramble perfect eggs, even how to treat your pots and pans that I've just added to this course, and how to approach cooking in things without them sticking, right? Moving people away from this feeling like you need nonstick pans, which again is also part of this process. It's not just about making the value shift to eat whole foods that are non-toxic. It's also kind of what are the toxins that we're bringing to our home, right? Do we have toxic dish soap? If you're eating all this healthy food and you got this cheap dish soap that's full of toxins that's on the plate still, right? Residually. So I got off on a tangent into the egg cookery. And then we kind of rounded off with week 5 with kind of like an average plate on a Wednesday night and what that looks like and how to kind of piece it together, right? And I've added in now to this course fish cookery, like how to kind of take home a whole fish if you want. Chicken cookery, taking down a whole chicken from beginning to end. I'm adding a kind of a curry and rice course, I'm calling, right? So it's an extension of the chicken lesson where we're building a curry from the ground up so people can kind of, as a base example, take things and make them saucy and make them spiced, right? And make them more exciting. And by the end, my hope is that you don't have to just on a Wednesday night, be searching for a recipe or racking your brain for what to make. Even if you don't have a plan, which I hope after taking this course, you've begun to form one, you can open your fridge and you've become a different cook, right? You've got different rituals. You've got different habits, right? And it's not hard anymore, right? It's built in, right? That's my desire is to build in a new sense of intuition and kind of grace in the kitchen in a really simple, approachable manner, because I promise you, none of this is complicated. It's actually so almost painfully simple, right? If we can just get clear that this is something we want and we go and get it.
Yeah. And that's the thing I try and tell people, don't overcomplicate. Like health is actually quite simple. Nature is simple. We complicate it and we can make it look complex, but take a step back. And these are simple, tools, guides, and everything to live a truly abundant life. Where can people learn more about you, more about this course?
So you can definitely follow me on Instagram. I'm really active there at Chef Aran Goldstein. You can check out my website, cookandlive.co. And I also have a YouTube channel where I put a lot of lessons, and it's actually enjoyable to watch on YouTube because it's the full frame. And that's also, it's Cook and Live with Chef Aran Goldstein. And that's
amazing.
Really good one.
Awesome. Love your IG. Thank you so much. I actually wanted to leave you and the listeners with this that I found from my friend who's been on this podcast a few times, Dr. James D. Nicolantonio. And I really love this because it's so true. He wrote, learn to cook. Highest ROI skill in the world. You're healthier, saves you money, increases your energy, brings the family together, adds pleasure to your experience of life. Start now. I think that's beautifully put from a doctor who should know a few things about living healthy. So Chef Aran, thank you so much again. Let's do this again sometime soon because this was wonderful. I feel like we still have so much more we could talk about.
I agree. Thanks so much, Casper. Yeah, let's definitely do it again soon.